All right, thank you for coming. We'll be starting shortly. All right, it's a couple minutes after 4, so I think it's time to, let's just wait one more minute, see if we get a couple more people to jump in. All right, thank you everyone for coming. We're just going to wait 1 or 2 more minutes. We're expecting a couple more people to join us. Thank you for your patience. Okay, thank you everybody for your patience. I think we're ready to get started. So to start, I'm going to pass it over to our director, Janine Benner, to talk about our program and our agency. Janine, I believe you're on mute.
Does it work now?
Yes, we can hear you, Janine.
Oh,
Thank you.
good. I'm so sorry. I put in my headphones to have better sound quality, and for some reason it didn't work. Well, anyway, again, as Michael said, my name is Janine Benner, and I'm the director of the Oregon Department of Energy. And I just wanted to kick off this meeting by saying thank you. We really appreciate those of you who are able to spend time with us this afternoon to talk about how the Department of Energy can help wildfire survivors with energy efficiency investments. And we hope that you will be willing to share your thoughts with us on how we can design a program that will work well for survivors. On the line with us today are a number of my colleagues from the department. So Michael Friels, whose voice you heard earlier, is leading our efforts to design and launch the program, and he'll be running the meeting, although I think his camera isn't working, so unfortunately you'll just get to hear his voice and not see his face. Christy Splitt leads our government relations work, and she'll be monitoring the WebEx Q&A on this call. Andy Cameron heads up our energy efficiency and conservation team. And we've got a number of other folks on the line from the department to take notes and answer questions. And we're also pleased to be joined by Andy Bolton, who's an analyst at the Building Codes Division, who will share a bit about what his agency is doing on wildfire recovery and hardening. And I also want to recognize the members of the Oregon legislature who've joined us. I see Representative David Gomberg on the line, and we'll have a chance to hear some comments from him in a few minutes. And I'm not sure if he's joined us yet, but I know Senator Dick Anderson was going to try to make it as well. So we're really hoping to have an interactive meeting with lots of questions and feedback from the attendees. And Michael is going to walk you through how you can participate in this meeting shortly. And I also just want to make sure everyone's aware that the meeting is being recorded. But before we jump into the meeting, I do want to take a minute and just let you know about the Oregon Department of Energy for those of you who aren't familiar. And what you see on the screen is our vision, our mission, and how we achieve that mission. So at ODO, we help Oregonians make informed decisions and maintain a resilient and affordable energy system. We advance solutions to shape an equitable clean energy transition, protect the environment and public health, and responsibly balance energy needs and impacts for current and future generations. Providing support for wildfire survivors to rebuild in a way that saves energy and money will contribute to a safe, equitable, clean, and sustainable energy future. And it's our hope that this program can make life at least a little bit easier for survivors in terms of energy efficiency. And I'm heartened that the Department of Energy can play a small role in the recovery. So now I'm going to turn it over to Michael to give you a sense of the agenda for today's meeting and how you can engage in the conversation. And thanks again for being here.
Thank you, Janine. So our meeting agenda for today. So first, we're going to talk about logistics and walk through WebEx. It may be new to some of us, and we want to make sure everybody's comfortable with the platform that we're using. And then we'll be talking about our general outreach and rulemaking process and kind of the timeline of our engagement. We'll talk about legislation that has brought us here and our initial plans on what a program may look like and some of our ideas. And we'll actually have the Department of Consumer Business Services talk about their wildfire hardening program as well. We'll have questions throughout the time that we're speaking, but we're going to have an open forum with a variety of questions at the end. And the questions are certainly, we're interested in the answers and hearing from you, but please don't be limited by those questions. We'd love to hear from you, you asking us questions about our program or offering feedback about your experiences and kind of your interest and any kind of ideas you have. We're here to listen. We've done a variety of different outreach to utilities, to local jurisdictions, to advocacy groups, but it's time to hear it from the people. We'd really like to hear what you'd like to see and what would help you in the rebuilding process. And I must note, as Janine said, this is being recorded. So using WebEx, so hopefully You can see it on your screen right now. We're using a format, a Q&A format. Because within this event, if you have a question, please raise your hand and we will call on you and we'll unmute you and you can please give us your feedback or ask your question or whatever you'd like to do. Within that mute function, unfortunately, we kind of have control over it. So please let us know if you'd like to say something. And you can actually see the variety of different panelists who are going to be speaking today on your upper right. But please, if you are going to write something in the Q&A, the Q&A box, which you certainly can, please send it to all the panels so everybody can see it. Okay, so our community outreach is going to consist of 4 different meetings within regions of the state. We want to try to cover as much of the geography of the wildfires of 2020. And so we're going to have a variety of these meetings. If you know people within your local area who weren't able to make this meeting, please encourage them to come to the other meetings. Certainly, we're trying to target those areas, but everyone's welcome. And so we'd love to have, if somebody else can meet, if you can, we can reach some other people in other areas at some of our other meetings. So we're going to have these outreach meetings, and then they will lead to kind of a follow-up meeting at the end. We'll take what we've learned, what we've heard from everyone, and start to develop some draft rules at the end that we can present and say, okay, this is what we've heard, this is what we're planning to do, and it's a great opportunity to get that last feedback in. We also have another opportunity for people to provide feedback. On our website, we have a public comment portal that people can go to. If you see it in the lower right here, that people can visit. It has a variety of questions that we'll ask here in this meeting and some additional ones. And we'd love people to go on there and provide their feedback. You don't have to answer all the questions. You can only answer a few that pertain to you, or there's also going to be just a spot where you can write your own thoughts if you don't want to address those specific questions, or you can upload a document if there's something you'd like to share with us. Okay, so unfortunately, while we're here, it's because in 2020, there were 21 fires across the state. Due to high winds, drought conditions, and multiple ignitions, we had massive fires. We lost over 1 million acres of land to these fires and over 5,000 structures. And so we're focused on developing a program focused on energy efficiency that we can help a lot of the people who are impacted by these fires. Representative Gomberg, may I ask you to share with us what you'd want the agency to know about the rebuilding effort so far?
Well, thank you so much. Good afternoon, everyone. And whenever I'm using a new application, I always begin by saying, can you hear me now? All right.
We can, thank you.
Well, I didn't want to wade too far in and then have somebody say, no, you're still muted. Well, hi, everybody. I'm David Gomberg, State Representative from House District 10. And I'm going to share some observations with you, and I'm going to share some personal experiences with you, and I'm going to make it very personal. And I'm going to do that for a couple of reasons. So one is because I want those of you from the agency to understand that for the fire survivors, this is very personal. And it's still very emotional, and it still feels very new and very raw. The second reason I want to do that is by sharing my own personal experiences. I hope that that my neighbors from here at the coast will feel encouraged to share their own stories and to ask questions with candor, even though they may be very personal as well. So for those of you that live out here on the coast, let me tell you that I live on Highland Road, just off Highway 101, which is technically an Otis address, although it's a little closer to Neatsu than for Otis. And I myself and my wife Susan live in the fire zone. For us, the power had been off for 3 days, and I had an appointment with County Commissioner Katie Jacobson early in the morning to come down and view the Fire Command Center. She picked me up at 5 in the morning. And we were just driving down the road when her phone rang, and she pulled off to the side of the road and with a very and her face went pale on me, and she turned and she said, "We're not going to the fire. The fire's coming to you." And so it was still dark. The power had been off for 3 days. It was still before 6 o'clock in the morning. And first responders were coming through my neighborhood door to door, warning people that they had to go now. And we're coasties, and we live in the earthquake zone. So most of us have go plans. We have go kits. We have a strategy in place. And for Susan and I, having a go plan saved us critical time. And I believe that for people that had go plans, it was also going to save lives. We had roughly 40 minutes to leave. Now, some people just had minutes to leave. Having 40 minutes in many ways is a luxury. It also means that you have time to make some painful choices. You gather your critical belongings, you implement your go plan, you gather your pets, make sure you have all your members of your family, but you still have time to look around the house. What am I going to take? What am I going to leave? What photographs? What personal mementos? What extra clothing do you take with you? And so we had a few minutes to do that, and to load them into our 2 vehicles. And then we started toward the door, and I will tell you that we paused for a moment, and I reached into the sideboard and I pulled out a bottle. Now it's still 6 o'clock in the morning, but I poured 2 glasses, and Susan and I toasted 30 years together in a house that had become our home. And we put the glasses down and we went out the door, not knowing what would be here when we got back. We were evacuated for 10 days. At the end of 10 days, and we were able to get back onto Highland Road, which had been closed off by the National Guard and the local fire department, we found remarkably that our own house was still standing, that the fire had come to the edge of our driveway and had burned past our house on either side. Susan said to us, it's a miracle. And I said, yeah, it was a miracle wearing a yellow shirt and a hard hat, but a miracle nonetheless. On our street, about a third of the homes were lost. I will add that although it doesn't really get into the statistics the same way, about another third of the homes lost either their water supply or their septic tanks, because we're all on wells and septics up here. So over half of the houses on my street impacted. And yet in other parts of Otis, I want to make it very, very clear that we were very fortunate here. Other parts of the coast, the fires raged through, doing much more damage, much more consequential damage, and impacting lives in a much more serious and hurtful way. And altogether, we lost between 300 and 400 homes. Again, that doesn't begin to detail the extent of the damage or the impact on their lives, the lives of those survivors. When you say, "Gosh, we lost 300 homes." And within weeks of the fire, I was called to Salem for legislative session. And serving on a new special wildfire committee, I was able to work on legislation that made it easier to rebuild, that reduced some of the tax consequences of rebuilding, and also to put money aside for all kinds of important rebuilding efforts. Not the least of which was $16 million that was going to go for water, sewer, and roads here in Lincoln County, but also the money that you're going to be talking about later today that was going to be for building back in a more energy efficient and resilient way. At this point, here we are over a year later. On my street, of the 13 homes lost, only 1 has been replaced. In other parts of Otis, I don't have any statistics at my fingertips, but it's my impression that about a third of the homes have been replaced, with new homes, primarily manufactured homes, arriving every day. But we are still certainly in the midst of a rebuilding process. I will tell you that I think everybody has got a rebuilding plan underway, and they may be asking, gee, we've got our plan well underway. What's the department going to be able to do for us at this stage of the process? And I hope that you'll answer the question for them. why are we having this meeting a year after the fires to talk about rebuilding when so many of us are engaged in rebuilding already? But still, so many people displaced, so many people impacted, so many people now celebrating returns to their home as a community that has come together in remarkable ways, helps each other with this process. Every new home that comes up the road is a celebration, but families are still struggling. I'm so impressed with how our communities have opened up their hearts, their homes, and their wallets to help each other. But the process, as I continue to emphasize, even though we're a year in, is still underway. So I'm going to pause at this point. I don't know if Senator Anderson's been able to join us or not, but I'm looking forward to the information you're sharing, and more looking forward to hearing from the true survivors, not just the lucky folks like myself. I hope that gives you just kind of a snapshot of what life was like that morning and what life has been like since then as we go through this recovery effort on the coast.
Thank you, Representative Gomberg. I don't believe that Senator Anderson has joined us at this point, so maybe they'll join us later in the process, and we can hear from them. Christy, would you like to talk about the legislation?
You bet. Hello, everyone. Just getting myself off camera. And thank you so much for sharing, Representative Gomberg. It's so good to see you. This literally hit so close to home for you, and that perspective is really important for us to hear. And I appreciate you asking tough questions already. I love it. So House Bill 2289 was a bill that Representative Gomberg and many other legislators representing those that were affected by the wildfires worked on together to streamline the rebuilding process, make it easier on folks to rebuild versus sort of the status quo on building a new home. And as part of that bill, there was a provision that allowed people to rebuild to a lower code, a lower building code. In Oregon, we have sort of a rich tradition where we are one of the most efficient, we have one of the most efficient building codes in the country as far as energy use. And so when the decision was made to sort of lower that standard with House Bill 2289, there was a discussion at the work group that what could happen instead is that there could be an incentive to provide people so that way they could build to code. And so that conversation was happening throughout session. And then House Bill 5006 was one of the last bills to pass during session. It's a traditional bill that Representative Gomberg knows all about as a Ways and Means leader. And it's called the Christmas tree bill. It's just sort of all sorts of different spending that didn't pass in another bill. And there was in that bill $10 million for the agency to support wildfire survivors, both folks who lost homes and folks who lost commercial buildings, so that they could not rebuild to that older code, but rebuild to the current code or perhaps even above it. So we got that money. And part of the reason why, sir, we are talking about it now is because that bill passed in June. And so we didn't have the ability or know that that program was coming until now. And so we're having that conversation now today to make sure that we're designing a program that'll work for folks. So thank you so much for raising that question. And we can maybe get some of the people working more in the details on the program could share more down the road about kind of as we go on how we expect to be able to help folks who have already rebuilt to code when they've rebuilt their homes. So that's essentially the story of how this happened. And it's really because of tenacious leadership from folks like Representative Gomberg and others who represent folks that we were able to have this funding, and we'll have it as a tool to help people pay for rebuilding their homes.
Thank you, Christy. Andy?
Thank you, Michael. Thank you, Christy. So I'll talk a little bit about our program objectives, and our primary focus is on wildfire recovery, meeting code, driving economic recovery, and incentivizing energy efficiency. Our program budgets should roughly follow the percent of structures destroyed, and it's worth noting that single family and manufactured homes equal about 94% of the total, with commercial and multifamily representing about 6% of structures lost. We recognize that the building types have varying needs. Single family and manufactured homes require considerations quite different from each other and different from small and large commercial and multifamily buildings. We want to offer a streamlined, a very simple delivery utilizing existing systems that really meet the needs of the survivors, stakeholders, and the local jurisdictions where these fires happened. Our goal is to create and maintain alignment with state and community stakeholders as much as we can, as much as possible. Equity will continue to be a major driver of our program design and implementation. And related to that, and as we're doing today, Odo really wants to utilize the public process to inform decisions. So Odo staff have done quite a bit of research on the rebuilding process and the structures that were impacted. At its core, this program is here to support the nearly 4,500 structures being rebuilt with a focus on building energy efficient communities and offering long-term affordability. While the total number of structures destroyed is over 5,000, we're really here to focus on the residential and commercial buildings, not necessarily on outbuildings, bridges, transmission towers, and the wide variety of other structures that were lost. It's worth noting this program is currently funded through June 30th of 2023. To date, around 25% of the structures have either been rebuilt or in the process of local jurisdiction permitting. Odo staff have examined comparable wildfire rebuilding rates through studies in California, and we have a confident estimate that around 45% of these structures will be rebuilt or in the construction process by the time the funding is currently set to sunset. And with that, I'll turn it back over to Michael. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you, Andy. So building codes and market practices. So as Andy was saying, and as Christy was pointing out with the legislation, there are a lot of people rebuilding, and certainly they can build to the 2008 building code as they rebuild on the residential and commercial side. But looking at energy efficiency, certainly that's our focus. We see quite a bit of value in building to our current codes. We understand there's some affordability desires to build to those previous codes, but energy efficiency has improved dramatically in the current code. And so we'd love to encourage people to build to the Oregon Residential Specialty Code of 2021 and the Oregon Specialty Code for commercial buildings. If you look at homes built from that previous code to today, you'd see about 30 to 35% energy efficiency gain in just building to our current code. We certainly recognize that market practices have changed, lighting has improved, appliances have improved, and there've been a variety of savings gained. But even getting people just to build to our current code, there's still significant savings there. And so we want to do our best to encourage people to build to our current code or even beyond. And so there's energy savings to be captured, but more importantly, that's long-term affordability. As people build today, they're going to be living in these homes for years, and we want them to be affordable for that time. And what can we do to offset some of those initial costs and help them realize that long-term affordability when they build back? So what I was talking about is code level support. And so we're looking at the bill really recognizes residential and commercial structures. So we're looking at single family residential, we're talking about commercial properties, we're talking about multifamily properties, and we're talking about manufactured homes. So a variety of different building types. So for people who are building single family homes and commercial properties and rebuilding, we're going to try to get them to rebuild to our current code. And there's a lot of energy efficiency values to benefits to that. But manufactured homes are a little different because manufactured homes are actually regulated by federal code. And so they don't necessarily receive the benefits of Oregon's advanced residential and commercial code. And so with manufactured homes, there's actually a NEEM standard, or like an Energy Star standard of a more efficient home. And we'd like to we're considering incentivizing people to get manufactured homes at that level. But the reality with manufactured homes community is there's a concern around the affordability and what people can actually build back with. And there's a significant amount of that population, when they rebuild, they're building previously owned or citing their previously owned manufactured homes. So we're looking at different opportunities to help those communities that maybe have already rebuilt, as we've talked about, or that may be citing a new, or I'm sorry, previously owned manufactured homes. And the way to do that would be to improve their heating and cooling system. So we've looked at, could we design a heat pump replacement system where we could offset significantly or all of the costs in partnership with utility programs of a heat pump replacement program. So a lot of manufactured homes have zonal heating or they have electric forced air furnaces. And if we could replace those or complement them with heat pump systems, we're able to provide a variety of different energy efficiency gains, but also air quality improvements, comfort improvements, and lowering people's electric bills for the lifetime of those systems can be a significant opportunity to improve their lives. And so we're certainly looking at those opportunities. And within this, we want to make sure what we create is utilizing existing systems. How can we work with utilities on above code measures? How can we work with counties and local jurisdictions to help people at that code level? How can we partner with all these groups and not necessarily create barriers? We certainly don't want to create barriers or make it difficult for people to realize these incentives. How can we utilize existing systems? Within building, I've certainly talked about the energy efficiency gains and the comfort gains, but we recognize that even building to code, there is a cost. And so we work with the Building Codes Division to take a look at what would be the cost of building to our current code, our residential specialty code of 2021 versus being able to build to that previous code. And so we're looking at, for a natural gas home, a little over $5,000. For an electric home, it's a little bit more, about $6,600. And that is across the state. And certainly that's just using an average home as an example. And so we're certainly curious, those are the numbers that we see, but we're interested if these numbers actually match what you're seeing in your area. And we'd love to hear some thoughts or comments on these building costs. Do they seem real? We recognize that there's constrained resources and building costs have certainly gone up, but we're curious, are these accurate? Are these what you're seeing? So I'll pause now to see if we get any questions or have any feedback on this.
Michael, it's Christy. I don't see anything yet, but I'll let you know if I do see anything pop up.
Thank you, Christy. And this might be a good time for me to mention, I know we have some people calling in, that you can press *3 on your telephone keypad to raise your hand, and that we could call on you. You can press *3 again on your keypad to lower your hand if you have had your question answered. Okay. So going back to kind of our program design elements, so we would like to be able to provide incentives to a variety of different building structures, single family manufactured homes, commercial homes. We want to be able to help people build to code and offer an incentive that offsets the majority of that cost to build a code and works within existing systems, working with counties. With manufactured homes, as I talked about, kind of the advantages of trying to help people replace their lost home with a more efficient version, or if not that, can we get a more efficient heating system within those manufactured homes to improve the quality and the comfort of those homes? And if we can this be a feeder system where we encourage people to build even above code to take advantage of utility programs? Can we incentivize at that code level and then above code level so people can get that increased energy efficiency savings and get that money off their utility bills for the life of that home? There's a lot of benefits to that. We certainly want to help people try to realize those. There's some great incentives already available from local COU utilities and Energy Trust of Oregon. But overall, when we're looking at our incentive funding, I guess we want to frame that as the majority of our funding, 92% of our incentives, are really looking at supporting people at that code level construction and at manufactured home level. When we've talked to different advocacy groups, state agencies, jurisdictions, what we're hearing is that's where people need the help the most. Many people have been able to rebuild, but certainly as time goes on, the different phases of the group where there were gaps in insurance coverage or people couldn't afford to rebuild immediately, this is a time for us to try to help them as best we can. And so there's a lot of opportunity there. And we would like to encourage people to build above code. And so we are going to allocate a certain amount, about 8%, give or take, of funding to try to help people rebuild above code, because we certainly see the value in that in reducing people's energy bills. Andy Bolton, would you like to talk about TCVS's wildfire hardening program?
Sure. Thanks, Michael. Can folks hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay, good. Just want to make sure. Thank you all for joining us, and thank you to Department of Energy for allowing me to come along and talk a little bit about the fire hardening program. I was going to give a little bit of a legislative background, but honestly, everything Christy said, a lot of it goes double for us. That same Christmas tree bill, we were allocated $10 million for a fire hardening grant program, which is the impetus for this program here today. Before I get started on the full description, I just want to point everyone towards that website that's at the bottom of the slide there. The slide will be up there the whole time, but that is the website where we'll be posting any sort of updates relating to the grant program. There is some initial information there now. There is an opportunity to take a short survey to sort of express interest for participating in the program. And there's a place where you can sign up for email alerts as the program gets developed. But generally, that website is a good place to watch for further details as they come about. The grant program's goal is to provide grant monies to incentivize fire hardening improvements during the course of the rebuilding process. Ultimately, the program is still in development, but right now we're planning on having sort of a menu of available fire hardening improvements that you could include with a rebuild. Things like more fire resistant siding or roofing, where you could select and add to the rebuild process. We will also have specific grant amounts that will be associated with each of those sort of menu items. So if you choose the the fire resistant materials for your siding, it would correspond to a certain set grant amount that would then be allocated to you. The one thing that's important to note is that I know some folks have been rebuilding already, and this is completely backwards facing as well. So if someone's out there that has completely finished their rebuild since the wildfires, they would just be just as eligible to participate in the program as someone who hasn't started until after we kick the program off. Program would be available for both site-built homes, manufactured homes, and commercial buildings. Would all have eligibility path. We're still working on what that looks like for each of those three categories, but they will all be eligible to participate in the program. We will be partnering with the local counties to help administer this program. So the goal is to make it as easy as possible to participate by funneling a lot of that participation through the building department and some of the already existing county administrative capacities. So as you're going through the planning and building process, you can find out more about the program, apply to the program, and have your work verified through the building department that you would already be working with. As we're going forward, we're looking at the next steps of sort of finalizing our relationship with the counties on this program, and then moving forward with a rulemaking process. And we're hoping to get the program kicked off and started running early next year. And just want to once again make note of that website at the bottom there. That is the best place to keep an eye on for further details about the program as they're developed. Thanks again.
Thank you, Andy. That was great. Okay, so now our presentation is done. Now we're trying to encourage some feedback. So I'm going to go through and read a variety of different questions. Please raise your hand, and It will call on you if you've got some answers or some questions of your own, or you'd like to provide some feedback. We'd certainly appreciate it. We're excited to hear from you. So our first question is, how can Oregon Department of Energy's program be designed to best support wildfire survivors rebuilding in a way that saves energy and lowers their energy bills? How is energy efficiency being considered by wildfire victims as they seek to rebuild? Are residential and commercial structures being rebuilt to current building codes? Or are people taking advantage of the ability to rebuild to the 2008 building code? Should Oregon Department of Energy consider providing low-income wildfire victims a higher level of incentive to offer greater support for communities struggling to rebuild? If you are currently working towards rebuilding, would you consider building beyond current code to make your home more energy efficient and improve long-term lower energy bills? How can the application process for a program like this be made convenient, easier, and more accessible? How can we best engage survivors to ensure they know this program is available to them as they rebuild? And finally, what other questions or feedback do you have for us as we develop this program? So again, these questions are certainly things we're curious about, but we would love to hear your thoughts and ideas, even beyond these questions. This is an open forum, and we'd love to hear from you.
I don't see any hands raised or anything in the Q&A yet, but I'm wondering if Representative Gomberg has any thoughts on any of this, given his experience and how much he's hearing from his constituents on this. And if not, that's okay, because I'm kind of putting him on the spot, I realize.
No, I was just unmuting. What I'd really hope that that some of my neighbors here at the coast would unmute and share a couple of thoughts and ideas with you. This is more about them than it is about me, and I've shared my own perspective, but I don't want to begin to speak for some of the people that have lost so much more than I have. So, be happy to hear from anybody.
Representative Gomberg, this is Janine with the department, and I'm curious, have you heard from constituents about energy efficiency in particular? I'm assuming it's not the first thing on people's mind as they're building back. They want to have a home to go back to, but I'm just curious if that's come up in your conversation with constituents about recovery.
Well, candidly, it is not. That's not to say that it doesn't factor into day-to-day decisions that are being made when they are having conversations with a contractor or purchasing a home. Most of the homes in our area that were lost were manufactured, not all of them, but most of them. That creates a slightly different kind of situation in terms of the kind of issues you're raising. But I think the priority has been to get a home in place and to get back into it. And as you can imagine, a great deal of competition for those services. Out here, contractors are always hard to find. And if I'm not mistaken, the number that I shared with you, which is my informal assessment that we've replaced about a third of the homes in Otis, is well ahead of the statewide average and the numbers that you're seeing. Am I correct, Christy, that you're estimating that fewer than a quarter of the homes have been replaced so far?
I believe that's correct, yes. And thank you for sharing that. And we do have a hand up. Lisa, I believe you should be able to unmute yourself at this point. If not, we'll make sure you can here soon.
I'm with Community Services Consortium, and we are working in the Canyon and in Lincoln County with wildfire survivors. I think my comments are that one way to engage survivors is to engage the LTRGs, which is obviously part of what you're doing, because that's how I got notice about this meeting. because the disaster case managers on the ground have the most direct contact with most of the survivors and can spend some time educating them about this program as well and opportunities. I always think that offering additional incentives to low income folks is definitely something to consider. And my other comment, about the ease of the program and access. I'm aware of a program that the county, Lincoln County, engaged in for sewer reimbursement and help for wildfire survivors. And everything that I've heard about however that is working is positive. So if there's a model there, that would be something that I could throw out there.
Thank you. Those are great insights and good tips. I thought I saw Bridget Hill had a hand up, although I don't see it up now. Bridget, do you want to unmute yourself and say anything you would like to share, any questions you'd like to answer or ask?
Can you hear me now?
Yeah, we can hear you. Thank you.
Okay, good. I've just been having a little trouble with the format here. Yeah, I'm a mental health support from Lincoln County, and I do resource navigation too out at the Salmon River Grange. And so I get an opportunity to talk to a lot of the folk out there about the different programs, things that are going on. Not all of them are working with disaster case managers. I do try to refer them over. But I think the biggest problem I'm finding is number 6, how do we engage survivors? How do we get that information across? And understanding that this is a community that is not necessarily computer savvy or necessarily wants to be. So some of the thoughts that they can go on the computer and access the information probably will be a little difficult with this particular population. So I just wanted to bring that up. It's something I run across quite often in my work with the community. So that's all I wanted to add.
Bridget, may I jump in? This is Michael. Have you found some communication channels that work the best in reaching these groups, whether it's face-to-face or just paper copies of documentation? What's worked for you?
A lot of face-to-face, a lot of paper documentation, a lot of phone calls. I am still working with folks that do not even have email address. And so I know when I've worked with some of the sewer and septic, with the sewer and septic program, I've actually had to give them my email address because at least 2 or 3 of the folks I've worked with don't have emails. So it does present a challenge, and just kind of being out there and boots on the ground seems to work best.
That's great to hear. Thank you.
Great. We have the person on the phone has their hand raised. And so someone else will have to remind me. I think they press *3 or something like that to talk. Is that correct? Someone can correct me if that's wrong.
Hi there. This is Jenny Damaris, the Lincoln County Emergency Manager. Can you hear me?
We can, Jenny. Thank you so much for joining us.
Great. First of all, thank you very much for everyone working so hard to advocate on the behalf of our survivors. One of the questions I have, just to see if perhaps this is already in the works, considering we have a limited number of manufacturers for manufactured homes in the Pacific Northwest, is DOE planning on reaching out directly to the manufactured home producers to make sure that when new customers are signing up or even shopping around for a vendor, as Representative Gomberg said, many of our lost homes were manufactured homes, and we're probably also seeing perhaps some folks that had stick-built homes might be looking towards manufactured home replacement because it would be quicker for them. So I'm just hoping that we are reaching out to those manufacturers so that when customers are signing up, they're asking them, are you a wildfire survivor? and then the information could be given directly to them when they're going through that potential process to purchase a new manufactured home.
The great suggestion. Michael, can you talk a little bit about if we've done that yet, if we plan to? I know that we've talked a lot about manufactured homes and the just significant issues that there are with delays in getting them right now. It just is one issue that we are tracking closely.
Yes, thank you, Christy. You're right. I mean, there are significant delays, and that is a challenge. And that speaks to what Andy was saying at kind of the rebuilding rate may be a bit of a challenge, and certainly we recognize that. But you're right, we do need to work with the manufacturers and at the retailer level when people go in to look at or want to purchase a new manufactured home, they need to have this information in front of them. And so we are going to partner ideally with Housing Community Services, with Energy Trust of Oregon, other partners who are working in that manufactured home space, utilizing kind of the work they've already done, the ground they've set with their financing or incentive programs. We're going to try to utilize those and enhance those if we can. And what we've been talking about is the opportunity to, can we offer the incentives at that purchase or at that financing stage when people are getting a manufactured homes? A lot of these incentives are really designed to be given at the end once a home has been built or decided. If we can offer incentives or a promise of an incentive at that early stage when people are looking to buy, they can actually use some of that in their financing, and it can help them afford maybe a more energy efficient product or a better product, because that's the stage when really they're considering what they can afford and what they can finance. And so that's kind of our opportunity there. But thank you, Jenny, for bringing that up.
Great. Although I see a couple of hands up, it's both people who recently spoke. So I'm assuming those folks have said what they need to say. But Bridget, if you have anything else to add, feel free. I don't see anything else in the Q&A. Is there anyone else who has anything they'd like to share? Any questions? Great. Well, Michael, I'll turn things over to you if that's okay.
Yes, wonderful. So obviously, we still want to get your feedback. And if you think of more things you'd like to tell us, please do. Please join us. You can find more information about our program. We have a website on our ODO's webpage, and we have a variety of different information about administrative rule activities, kind of our process that I talked about earlier, about our other community meetings and rulemaking meeting following up. You can certainly email us. We're happy to answer questions or provide additional information. You can sign up for regular email updates whenever we have program updates. Please do that. We mentioned DCBS's wildfire hardening program, and Andy talked about that program and the advantages that you want to take advantage of that program and everything that's happening. And but ultimately, kind of looking forward, our program timeline is to conduct these community meetings for the next 2 months and move into our rulemaking process. We'll try to finalize. We'll have some initial draft rules. We'll have a rulemaking meeting, and we'd love feedback at that point as well. And then we're looking to try to implement this in the first quarter of 2022. You know, what we've heard from everyone is the importance of trying to get this program out as soon as possible to try to provide help and to let people know that it's available when they're creating their plans and trying to decide what they can afford and how they can rebuild. So we want to get that as early as possible. And I know we've talked about still being able to offer our incentives to people who have already rebuilt. So we're not going to certainly lose those people, but we recognize people are making some tough decisions right now. We want to get this in front of them as soon as we can. This isn't the only opportunity to provide feedback. We have, as I mentioned earlier, a public comment portal. And so if you think of additional information that you think we should know, things you'd like to share, upload documents, or answer some of these additional questions in greater detail. I know I always like to think through an answer before I do, or comes to me later on. And so please join us. Please go to our public comment portal and provide some additional information. we really appreciate it. And it does impact the way we're doing things and the way we want to build this. We certainly want to keep everyone in mind and build something that works, is effective, and helps as many people as we can.
Thanks, Michael. And something you said inspired Jenny from the phone to have another question or something to share. So go ahead.
Hi there. Okay, so one more question from Jenny in Lincoln County. So I'm just wondering about some other types of community members that were affected by this event. One are people that sustained wind damage. I have a home in Yahas that was destroyed by wind damage in this federal declaration. And I'm wondering if the messaging will be able to incorporate them, even though they didn't lose their house due to fire. So that's one. You don't have to answer now. Just keep that in mind. And the second is, what about the property owners that decided to buy another property somewhere else? Because my in-laws lost their property in the Lions fire, like on day 3, but they chose, based on their age and the stress, to just buy a different property. And they're trying to make the decision to sell their property or rebuild or do something different with it. Will those sort of credits, if you will, pass to the new owner who might build on that property, or could possibly they use those credits, if you will, to improve the energy efficiency of the home that they actually did end up purchasing?
Great questions, Michael.
Okay, so the first part, the wind damage, boy, that's something I haven't even considered, Jenny. Thank you for bringing that up. And that really hasn't come up in our conversations. So we'll take a look at that and think about that more, and we might have to follow up with you on for questions about the particulars of that. But as far as people rebuilding and your parents selling their property, you're right that the legislation did establish that people can sell that property, and if somebody wanted to purchase it and rebuild, they could do so, and they could receive those credits. And so I guess if putting it on the market, that's something that might be a selling point, that people could take advantage of that, of our program. And the reality is, we want to rebuild these communities as energy efficiently as possible, and we are focused on the structures and trying to support them as well as we can. Housing Community Services has some individual programs, and FEMA does for the people themselves. And we're really focused on the structures and trying to make them as energy efficient as possible. We're kind of trying to be agnostic on who the actual person is. And the legislation kind of drives us to do that. We want to help these communities rebuild as best we can. And so whether it's your parents or somebody who purchased that land, what we want is a vibrant community to come back and to be as energy efficient as possible. And Andy Bolton might want to speak to wildfire hardening, but I would say it's probably the same as well.
Yeah, the fire hardening program is anticipating doing the same thing. The eligibility will follow the property itself.
And that's something that was in that House Bill 2289 we mentioned early on in that conversation today. But thanks for the really good questions, 3 of them, I think. We'll circle back with you if we have questions on the wind damage issue, or let you know either way how we can handle that. Well, we'd kind of already given our closing pitch, so if I don't see any other hands up or anything else in the written Q&A, so I think we can just say thanks to everyone for coming one more time, and just know we do want to hear from you, even if you didn't want to speak up. In this venue, the portal that we've put together would be a great place to.
Christy,
go ahead, Representative Gomberg. Thank you.
Well, I just wanted to say to those of you of the agency on the phone today, I really appreciate you reaching out in this way. If I'm not mistaken, this is the first of several programs that you've got planned. I'd be interested to hear how the others go when you complete the process. We've got a lot of folks on the phone today that are in the business of trying to provide support to our survivors. I thank them for their ongoing efforts, and as always, am mindful of the survivors that are out here and working hard every day to get their lives back to normal. So thanks for this process today, and thanks for all the efforts that all of you are making.
Thank you so much, Representative. And that's a good reminder that the portal is something we hope people share. Like, you could put it in your newsletter. The folks that are on the call could share it out with folks that they know and work with. We want to hear from people that are actually experiencing this on the ground, both survivors and those that are working to support them. I also just want to share that The portal has the ability to be translated into so many different languages. So it's also something that can be accessible to people that don't speak English as a first language as well. Great. Well, thanks again, everyone, for joining us. And if you need anything, there was an email address too that I wish we'd had on this last page too. Michael, will you remind me what it is? Because that's probably the easiest thing to remember. Is it wildfire.rebuilding? Wildfire.recovery@energy@oregon.gov would be a great place to email if you have any other questions.
Thank you, everybody. Have a lovely evening.
And thanks so much, Representative Gomberg, for joining us. We really appreciated having you here and your voice.
Thank you, Christy. We'll talk again.
You bet.